Welcome to our March 1st edition, Gold and Black Live. Brian Newbert will join us in segment one. We'll have also David Neff from the Boilermaker Alliance will join us in seg two, and Kevin Sullivan, a longtime media expert, has worked in the NBA, and we'll talk a little bit of sports media and other things with Kevin. But Brian, we're going to talk Purdue basketball and other things with Brian Newbert. I want to thank our sponsors. Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. And of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. All right, Brian, this is, at the start of this season, I think you were one of the few ones that saw this coming with Michigan State, I should say. But at the start of the season, this was going to be the game. Purdue, Michigan State, two teams that were ranked in the top five to start the season. It is still a huge game for Purdue, as the Boilermakers could claim its 26th Big Ten championship with a victory. They may have it before the game actually starts, but what a difference some time can make between where the Boilermakers are right now and where the Spartans are. Spartans are fighting for their NCAA tournament life, but an interesting development to say the least. What do you expect to see on Saturday night?
Um, I expect Purdue to be pretty hard to beat at home.
Yeah,
Obviously, I think Michigan State, historically, this is the last situation you'd want to find them in, having lost their last couple games, having played themselves onto the bubble as opposed to off the bubble. This was supposed to be the game of the year. This was supposed to be the number one team in the Big Ten versus the number two team in the Big Ten. Michigan State was a popular pick to, be a Final Four contender this year, if not a team that could actually supplant Purdue atop the Big Ten. But
yeah, right.
it's kind of what I call the funhouse mirror of the NCAA tournament, where it
Yeah,
it distorts reality. Michigan State wins one game that matters last year in the NCAA tournament. They bring back all the same above average players, only a year older, who lost 11, 12 games, whatever it was last year, were a non-factor in the Big Ten race. And since they're all back, and it's Tom Izzo, everybody figured that it was, and he's obviously earned that, but
yeah,
everybody
no
thought that
question.
all of a sudden you were going to go from this middle of the pack Big Ten team to this top five team just because you have all these guys back and a promising recruiting class coming in for a coach who plays seniors over freshmen. Um, it just never made any sense, and it has been exactly kind of what I figured it would be, what logic suggested it would be, that all the same players would yield much the same results. And Michigan State has 11 losses now. Obviously, isn't anything like the team that people figured they would be. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous. They obviously are. As I said before, historically, you never want a desperate Tom Izzo team. I just don't know if this Tom Izzo team has that extra gear that they tend to come up with. They've historically come up with in situations where their proverbial backs are to the wall. But Purdue obviously has a lot to play for here with the Big Ten title on the line. There'd be no better opponent to clinch it against. It'd be kind of a figurative passing of the baton here as Purdue sort of replaces Michigan State to a certain extent as the class of the Big Ten, as I wrote about the other day. Um, but should be a good game. But I just have a hard time seeing Purdue losing a home game, and losing a home game at this point in the season.
Yeah, and another 8 o'clock start. It will be a prime environment one would expect, as it was when Indiana came for that same 8 o'clock game about 3 weeks ago for the game on Fox. Yes, Tom Izzo has taken Michigan State, and no one's disparaging his record there. Eight Final Fours, and what is it, 10 Big Ten championships, or shares of Big Ten championships at least. But yes, it does seem that, and there are even some talking about whether Tom Izzo wants to continue coaching in this environment. I'm not saying we're getting to that point necessarily. I don't
We can
know.
say that he
We can we can say it. I just don't know. We don't cover them, but we watch them.
well,
But what do you think about that?
I have been at a number of summer events where I've seen Tom Izzo taunting the younger coaches, sitting there at recruiting events, laughing at them for the landscape they have to advance their careers in,
Yeah,
whereas he's on his way out, as he likes to, point out to people, so he doesn't have to worry about all the things going on in terms of running a college basketball program nowadays. So I don't think I think he sees the light at the end of the tunnel here in terms of, the end of his career. I have no idea when again, I don't cover him.
Yeah,
I'm not around him on a regular basis or anything like that. I'm just extrapolating from one or two little anecdotes over the years. But he obviously is not a huge fan of uh, what all goes into being a head coach at this level in college basketball nowadays. Nothing would surprise me in terms of when he decides to step away. And when he does, obviously one of the great careers in college basketball history. So it's not like it's some rando just kind of disappearing. He's obviously, I don't know if he's a big farewell tour guy. I doubt he would do that. Um, there's also, I guess, some up in the air dynamics in terms of who's going to replace him. And he's always struck me as a guy who would like to hand things off to one of his guys, whether or not there's one of his guys who are viable in that sense. I've always thought Drew Valentine would make a lot of
yeah.
sense. He's never been on Izzo's staff, but I don't think that's necessarily important. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but yeah, it's
I know, because I asked you.
I think
Yeah,
he's probably within striking distance here at just, one of these days, just kind of up and walking away. He might be one of those guys who just does what some of these other guys in college coaching did. Nick Saban, he's working one morning and then that
he's not.
afternoon he's just kind of gone.
Yeah,
I mean, I think anything's possible here. I do think
yeah,
there's a little bit of, I don't want to say ego, that's kind of a loaded term, but I do think there'd probably be some inclination on his part to get the appreciation out of this that he obviously has earned, that he deserves. He's flirted with NBA jobs before, and what that's amounted to has been the streets fill with adoring Izzo fans pleading with him to stay. And I think that that sort of thing has always been important to him to a certain extent. I'm not saying that as a slam. I'm just saying that's
yeah. No,
I think there's a little bit of vanity there that he's earned, and um, I just don't know if he would just kind of disappear into the night that way, or if he would draw it out a little bit. But if you ask me whether or not he'll still be the coach at Michigan State in 5 years, I would probably be inclined to say no more than I'd be inclined to say yes.
yeah. I think it makes sense at age 69 too. And yes, he is kind of the voice of Michigan State in their some of their university crisis. He's kind of the one that has been there for that school. All right, Purdue has that 6 day break after the win against Michigan. One would think that this is kind of their second. In fact, they had that 6 day break, I believe it was, heading into the last time they played on a Saturday night when they played Indiana. But just talk about the dynamics of where Purdue is. Obviously, a at arm's length victory over Michigan, which was got the job done. Uh, what does Purdue need to do, even these last, in your view, the last three regular season games before you head to the Big Ten tournament? What do you want to see? I mean, you're going to have a tough game against Illinois. You'll have a tough game of sorts on Saturday night against Michigan State, just because it's Michigan State. But what do you want to see if you're a Purdue observer looking at these last three regular season games?
Just be sharp. I mean, just be on top of
Yeah,
things. I mean, I don't think there's been a game this year where Purdue just hasn't shown up,
yeah,
and I don't anticipate them starting now. I think that's been a pretty positive sign. Now, losing and not showing up are not the same thing.
yeah,
Um, I think Purdue's been pretty dialed in all year. Even the games they've lost, other than Nebraska, which was a typical Big Ten road game boat race that I don't think anybody was winning there that night. They've been pretty good. It's just a matter of taking care of the basketball, being as detail oriented and as effective as you can be from a defensive perspective. I think they're okay defensively. I don't think they're great defensively. I don't
yeah.
think they'll ever be great defensively, but I think they can be better than they have been. And just keep showing up. Just keep giving good effort, and don't squander it now. Purdue's had a great season um, under um, you know, some circumstances that might have held back a lot of teams. There's been a lot of pressure on Purdue this year, and that's kind of a situation they've thrived in it as opposed to folding under the weight of. And I think just keep it up, and you obviously want to close the season strong. You want to go into the postseason feeling good about yourself. You obviously want to win as many championships as you can get. I think obviously the writing is on the wall about Purdue getting at least a piece of the Big Ten title, which is important. And then I think the Big Ten tournament, people will say, hey, it doesn't matter, just get some rest before the NCAA tournament. Well, if there's championships there to be won, go win them. You have the best team, one of the best teams in the country. You might as well go get a championship. There's no real data to tell anyone, hey, it's better to lose in the first round of the Big Ten tournament than not. Um, I don't think losing going into the NCAA tournament is ever a positive thing. Um, but I think you just kind of want to stay on top of things at this stage of the season and not show any kind of vulnerabilities and not give any reason for doubt going into the postseason.
All right, you've watched a lot of Big Ten basketball and seen a lot of it in person. I don't even know when your All Big Ten ballot is due, and I don't even. Do you pick 10 or do you pick 5? I don't even remember anymore. But
15.
you pick 15.
Yeah, first, second, and third teams.
All right, so give me your top. All right, Braden Smith and Zach Edey will be on that ballot, I assume, in the top
First team,
15.
yes.
And you'll be on your first team. Will Lance Jones make your top 15?
He will be on either my second or my third team, as will Fletcher Loyer as of right now. We will see how both those guys finish up. But as of right now, I have 4 guys on my top 15. That might seem excessive, but Purdue's the best team in the league, and I think it's justified. So right as of right now, my first team is Zach Edey, Braden Smith, Boo Buie. I have to make a decision when push comes to shove between Marcus Domask and Terrence Shannon.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I do think that, you know, being charged with a felony and getting suspended is something that hurts your team. So that's not a moralistic stand that I'm taking there. It's
Yeah,
a practical basketball matter
yeah.
as well as a moralistic issue. Obviously innocent until proven guilty. And then the fifth spot, I think Tyson Walker from Michigan State.
Yeah,
As of right
Damask.
now, I mean, we'll see how
Yeah,
they finish up.
yeah, and you're gonna see Damask again in person on Tuesday night. I thought it was interesting on what would have been on Wednesday night against Minnesota. I think like he scores in the first half, comes back and scores. Or he had very little. Maybe he had
Yeah.
a basket or two in the first half, comes
Well, he
back
also
and
really carried them when Shannon was out too, and I think
no doubt he's
I
terrific.
think he
He'd
deserves
be
to
my
be
first.
recognized for that. He's been really good this year, really good.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, and it'll be interesting to see who does make it. But I think you're not far off of that from that standpoint because those are the guys that have really made a difference throughout the course of this Big Ten season. It is still an unpredictable year, and obviously we'll find out in a couple of weeks how many teams in the Big Ten make the NCAA tournament. Nebraska takes a loss on Thursday night by a good margin. Yet they're a team that seems to be in. Michigan State seems to be in good enough shape, but they're starting to play their way out of it. It's hard to imagine you'd see less than 5 or 6 teams from the Big Ten, but I guess it all depends how it all shakes out here in the last couple of weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, it's a bad year in the Big Ten. I mean,
Yeah,
after Purdue and probably Illinois, it's like the best
yeah,
mid-major league in the country. Um, you know, it looked like Wisconsin was pretty good there for a while. They came back to earth in a really hard way. Ohio State's played better since changing coaches. I don't think there's any causation there, but I think that
yeah,
it's been a lost season for them. It's been a lost season for Michigan. It's been a lost season for Indiana. And look who we're talking about here. We're talking about 3 of your biggest brands in the league: Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana are pretty much all in the toilet this year. And um, I think part of that is the reason why you've got upstarts like Minnesota and Wisconsin kind of not Wisconsin, Nebraska taking advantage of the situation and playing themselves into borderline NCAA status here. And I just think the league's not very good. And that could be a reflection of the changing times. Maybe the transfer era hasn't been a good thing for the Big Ten. It's been a continuity-based league forever. Doesn't mean it always has to be, but I think that you've seen some teams really do well in the portal, Illinois, namely. Purdue, even though Purdue's not going to put a lot of emphasis on recruiting transfers every year. Obviously, Northwestern and Purdue benefited significantly NIL wise from being able to keep their guys in school. Zach Edey at Purdue, Boo Boo at Northwestern. But you also look at Indiana as one of those cautionary tales of just how much you can flub the portal too, and how much that matters. And it's just been kind of an uneven deal in that regard. You've got Iowa playing pretty well now, and they didn't look like they were going to be in the tournament earlier in the season. Nothing would surprise me here these last couple of weeks in terms of who actually gets in and who doesn't get in, because you've got some teams making some late cases for themselves. You've got some teams playing their way out of it, as Michigan State is. That's why it's so important for Michigan State Saturday to at least be competitive. You can't come into Mackey and get blown out again like they have a couple times over the years. That would be a really bad look, as you're trying to legitimize yourself as a NCAA tournament team.
Hard to imagine the Spartans have not won in Mackey Arena since 2014. And that is a hard thing. But, you look even like the teams like Ohio State, who has beaten Purdue, Michigan State. They beat on Nebraska, I mean, by, relatively soundly at home here on Thursday night. They have a lot of work to do at best. They're going to have a deep run and hope for the best in the Big Ten tournament and win out probably to have a chance to even be considered in the NCAA tournament. They're not even considered on the bubble. So it will be an interesting last few weeks, last couple of weeks. If Purdue, from Purdue's standpoint, if you're a Purdue fan, you hope you can get the 26th Big Ten championship wrapped up on Saturday night, but we'll see how that goes from that standpoint. All right, Brian, thank you so much. As always, we will look for your work not only on Saturday night, but as we lead into a busy final week of the season, when you have a game at Illinois Tuesday, and then of course Purdue hosting Wisconsin on Sunday, and the end of the senior day for Zach Edey and Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton as well. That will be an interesting, there'll be a lot to talk about next week with that. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We'll be joined again by David Neff from the Boilermaker Alliance, who will talk a little NIL stuff with us, and Kevin Sullivan also in segment 3. So we look forward to that, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Golden Black Live.